Welcome to Conflict Managed. I'm your host, Mary Brown. Conflict Managed is a weekly podcast about toxic work environments and how to fix them. We're glad you're here. Good morning, Lola, and welcome to Conflict Managed.
Good morning, Mary. So nice to be here. Thank you.
I know we're going to have a wonderful conversation together, and all the work that you do really resonates with me, so I'm really excited to be talking with you, and I know our listeners are going to benefit greatly from your experience and what you've been writing and thinking about and practicing. But before we get to all of that, I would like to hear about the first job you ever had as a young person.
Oh, okay. Well, the first job I had as a young person was actually with my husband because I got married very young. I was 17 years old. And he started a business when I was like 19. I was going to school. And and he's still an engineer, but he started this company, electronic manufacturing company, and he needed some help. So the first job I had is with him, answering the phones and doing the administrative stuff. And then I moved to be the HR manager for the company as the company grew. Then I became a CFO, and then I was served on the board in our company.
Wow. So your first job was the two of you and growing this business together. What was that like? Working with family can be wonderful. It can be fraught. What was that experience like as your first job?
Well, it was interesting because we always loved working together. It made sense. He was, creating products. I was there talking to people, and it was very, very good. We worked together for 27 years. I think the difficulty became is when other my family members started to join in, and our company has, grew to like 100 people, and we had family come in, and the difficulty became in stressful situations when there's like a relationship ruptures happen, and then you suddenly bring all the baggage that happened in your personal life as you were growing up, and you start to respond to parents or siblings in a certain way, and that's where I think we got off.
Yeah. That can be tough. I mean, you have these obviously really strong connections and things that you can do when your work really is your family, but then the toughness of what you just mentioned, and when the people you work with aren't your family, right? So that can add a layer. It adds a layer. Now, whether it's good or bad and indifferent, it adds a different kind of dynamic as I'm trying to interact, but I'm not going to Thanksgiving or whatever holiday it might be because I'm not part of your family, but I work here. Um,
Yes, well,
yeah.
that's true. Our family was very close because my sister and I were married to brothers.
Oh
So
my
we had a
goodness.
one set of in-laws from both sides. So it was interesting because as our business grew and we had kind of like differences of how we run the business altogether, we still came back as a family, and we would meet every week, no matter what occasion it was, a holiday or birthday or anniversary or whatever it was. We always met every week. But the problem is when there was a certain rupture happened, and this is, I learned later in life, obviously, as a psychologist, but we didn't know how to repair those ruptures. And they basically got us stuck in this negative patterns where the way we protected ourselves or the way we tried to resolve issue or deal with our emotions, one person would shut down and not talk, the other person would get angry and aggressive, and these type of behaviors started to really erode our relationships with each other and became made it very difficult for us to work cohesively together and even be as a family together, because it started to spill over to our personal gatherings. Right.
Yeah.
So, for example, if you would have a meeting and some family members would not participate or not talk during meetings, well, suddenly they didn't talk during parties either,
Oh,
and
wow.
it was becoming very painful. And it's interesting how these negative patterns start small
Mhm.
and then they actually erode your trust, erode your engagement, erode who you are. And it becomes so difficult to figure out what is going on. Why don't we talk about it?
Mhm.
Why? And every time we try to talk about it, it comes across as blaming, judgment, criticism, and the other person defending, also attacking. So we didn't really know how to talk about our hurt feelings or where even to start because it was just so eroded and
Mm.
difficult.
I love that you're using this word eroded, erosion, because I think you're absolutely right. Typically, what happens in any kind of difficulty, it usually starts small. Well, sometimes they're big things, but a lot of times at work, it's that I was left off this email chain. It's the my idea wasn't picked up. It's the whatever it might be. It's a small thing that if it was addressed, could be addressed and then we can move forward. But it's erosion, I think of like corrosion, right? It just slowly eats away. And then all of a sudden, before you know it, you've got this big crater, right? And hopefully not the Grand Canyon, but we know that's a formed over time with erosion. And the little happens and then all of a sudden it's big. And when it's big, it just can feel overwhelming. And now there's this giant gap, this gulf, and as you said, what to do in this situation. And whether or not you work with family, this is very common, right? In work environments, this erosion that happens. So how did you repair it? Did you repair it?
Well, it's interesting because when erosion happens, you start to look at the other person differently.
Hmm.
You start to see the other person as your enemy.
Hmm.
It's like there's no safety, there's no trust, there's no comfort, and you also start to see yourself change. Like I mean, I remember thinking to myself, I used to be happy.
Hmm.
I used to be a happy person. Why am I angry all the time? What's going on with me? And that I think desperation, like sitting in the long board meetings, looking at each other like, my gosh, we have gone such wrong directions. We are no
Hmm.
longer a cohesive unit. We are really struggling all together. And that was like 15 years ago when I was sitting and I was thinking to myself, I need to figure out why. And what I started to do, I started to look at like how do people get triggered and how do we get off in meetings. And I would draw these diagrams and try to understand why people behave the way they do. And I saw that these patterns would repeat itself. Like we start the meeting really well, we have we have intent. The intention is to have a productive meeting.
Right.
And then somebody said something, and then the other person shuts down. And no matter how you're trying to re-engage them, they won't even do it. And then the other person starts attacking. And that pattern would just repeat over and over and over again. So I kind of like set myself a goal to figure this out. And I went to school and got my degrees, but it was after when I was sitting in a couples workshop where I learned about attachment, where I learned about these negative patterns that couples get into. And I started to make sense like, wait a second. Work relationships are all about attachment, all about these negative cycles that they get into. And when I started to learn about it, and I, flew to New York, studied with Sue Johnson, and I really started to understand emotions because emotions is what really drives our behavior. And I never thought about that. Mary, I went through school. I went through psychology school, my master's degree or organizational psychology. I don't remember, learning how powerful emotions are in any of these schools and how to work with emotion. It
Yeah.
was always cognition. It was always if you understand it, you can change it. And it wasn't the case.
Hmm.
You can tell the person, stop yelling, this is unprofessional.
Right.
Don't yell in the meeting. Or could you please respond? Stop, like, why are you so shut down? We can't work if you don't respond. You can tell them, but nothing is going to change.
Hmm.
So you have to understand this emotional disconnections that are happening and rupturing these relationships and how to actually heal them. And that's what I started to do. I started to bring these tools that people use in emotionally focused therapy in couples to the workplace, to the boards, to the teams. And things started to change. Suddenly, we started to de escalate what's going
Mm.
on. We started to understand how people are feeling so isolated and alone and hurt
Mhm.
and helpless. We started to provide tools and so where people can express and share. So first of all, they need to understand what's going on with them
Mhm.
internally, like what triggered them, what sensitivity they touched, what emotions do they feel, what fears do they have, and what do they need to feel safe and connected. They need to have that language. People don't
Mhm.
have that language right now. So when I started to do that and I started to educate everybody, kind of like my own role modeling, first I got a lot of rejection. Like they like, no. So I was like one out of seven, 7 people telling me, what is this? Kindergarten? We're not going to talk about our emotions. Forget it. But I kept doing it, Mary, and it was so hard. It
Mm.
was so hard because people rejected it.
Yeah.
But once they experienced it and saw a difference, they said, oh, you're right. It's
Mhm.
working.
That has been largely my experience. I certainly am not into the weeds of emotional intelligence like you are, but it is the case whenever I bring up emotions and conflict, and I see this glaze that happens, and like, I don't want to do this touchy-feely thing, and yet, right? If you're not having an emotional response, you're probably not in conflict. And I think about my own past. So my past is in philosophy, and when I think about how philosophers behave and how they think and the theories that they come up with, it's so detached. And yet, like the existentialists say, okay, but what are you going to do? Well, what do I feel like doing? Right? I could have all the reasons in the world to show up, but if I don't feel like it, I'm not doing it. Right?
Exactly.
So, when we don't pay attention to, if we don't know or about our emotions or how they are, what they are, how they're influencing us, how they are us, and that emotion as information instead of something scary, something unbidden, something different or separate from me, as if like emotions just come upon us and we're captive to them. If we don't understand our emotions and have that language as you're talking about, then it's very hard to know ourselves and therefore know how we are engaging or disengaging and the dynamic of what's going on with whatever situation, conflict, or relationships we're in.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, Burton Lanfey, who wrote first book on system theory, because if you think about a team or relationship, it's a system, right?
Mhm.
We work together, we depend on each other. And what he said is that if you want to change a living system like a relationship, because it changes all the time,
Mhm.
you have to identify the core organizing elements that drive that are driving the system. And both like John Bowlby, who was the founder of attachment theory, and Carl Rogers, who was the founder of humanistic theory, they both said that emotion is the thing that drives our behavior. So, I mean, if you think about even neuroscientifically, like how our brain works,
Mhm.
what happens is the emotions are get activated when we feel that disconnection from the people we depend on.
Mhm.
Because if we don't have that connection, we are no longer safe.
Mhm.
So our amygdala is basically is activated in the moment when we get disconnected. Well, why do we get disconnected? Because we suddenly feel that rejection. We suddenly feel some sort of that message comes across that we are not valued to this person. That person doesn't care about us. So that message, it could be not correct, but we still that get that message. In that moment, if we don't have a secure attachment relationship with this person, our amygdala will automatically get activated. And emotion is what tells us we're no longer safe. So emotion plays a very big role in our assessment of whether we are safe or not, whether we can rely on that person or not, whether they have our back or not. So we don't feel alone in this world because we can't solve problems alone.
Mhm.
Yeah, so this is very important. I think, yes, people I think the society has told us that emotions are weak and I think because we did not know how to work with emotions before. Now that's
Mhm.
why they were like scared of emotions. Oh, emotions are, overwhelm us. We should just shut it down. It's not an emotional decision. Well, we can't really make a decision without
Right.
emotions. Like even if I ask you, Mary, what is your favorite ice cream? You still have to go through the emotions to recognize what's your favorite ice cream. We can't make that decision. So I think through neuroscience and understanding this attachment and how the brain works, we're really starting to understand the power of that emotion and how important it is for us. It's like if you want to change emotion, you have to go into emotion to change
Mhm.
emotion,
Mhm.
right? So it's very fascinating to me.
So let me ask you this. As you were talking, I was thinking about all the different kinds of people we meet at work and all the different people we rely on, whether they're colleagues or people who report to us or we report to them in order for the system to work well, right? We need people to be professional, trustworthy, respectful, so on and so forth. And yet we meet people and they happen to be showing up in all different ways, different levels of resilience or lack thereof, different levels of emotional intelligence. They are just a ability to be present and engaged and thinking about the team as if just themselves. And honestly, there's quite a few people out there that we ought not trust a lot because they've shown us. Because for whatever reason, at this particular time, I mean, I think we're all works in progress. So no, I would say no pronouncement on anybody. We're not done. Um, so if I need to rely on people, and yet people around me are more or less unreliable, nobody is perfect, and some people are farther along the way than others. I guess what I'm getting at is I'm a person at work and there's all of these personalities around me giving me all this different kind of information. Um, do you have any words of wisdom of how you navigate that?
Mary, this is a challenge, I think, for everybody because they don't choose their coworkers. The company chooses them and they put them. And also they move people around. The
Mhm.
manager comes, they go, they suddenly part of this team and that team. And I think the more people understand themselves, really like understand that they need to have a secure connection with their manager because the manager is the most important connection. It's like the key attachment figure is the manager, like a parent. They need to have that secure connection with them. They also need to have a secure connection with each of their team members. But let's imagine you're in a team and the manager is not responsive or is not kind of emotionally available to you. So
Mhm.
what you have to do is you have to be emotionally balanced yourself.
Mhm.
So you got to learn about the triggers, like what is triggering you in that moment when you get triggered. You also understand your raw spots, your sensitivities with that. And we all really have similar sensitivities. When somebody doesn't respond to us, we get rejected.
Mhm.
That's part of our sensitivity. It's normal for us.
Mhm.
And also what happens to us emotionally, so we can have this understanding, we can slow it down and organize our emotions, where we talk about the surface emotions, the softer, vulnerable emotions, and then primary emotions. And there are only four: sadness, shame, surprise, and fear, right? Those are four basic emotions. And then we need to understand what happens to us in our body when the person doesn't respond to us. And the reason why, and what do we need? The reason why I'm saying all this process, is it helps us to manage our stress. It helps us to rebalance ourselves. And if the manager is not available to, for you to share this with them, saying like, "Hey, I got triggered when you didn't respond," you can share it with another person who can respond to you and be there for you. And again, the reason why is if you are not in balance, you will start to interpret their behavior as bad, as
Mhm.
negative.
Mhm.
They doing it on purpose. They doing it to hurt me. They don't value me. They don't care about me. That type of thought process will start keeping you off balance and will actually create more animosity in yourself, more anger, more behaviors that are not going to be positive in your interactions. So if you have a chance to process your experience when you get hurt or disconnected, you'll be able to be yourself and be available when the manager comes over, and you can co-regulate their emotions, so to speak, and tune into what's going on for them. So you are becoming an expert dancer. It's like, think about the dancer, like the lead in the dance. The interaction is a dance. Every time you invite a person to talk to you, you kind of like inviting them to the dance floor. And emotion is the music. If you're able to balance yourself, you'll be able to tune into other people better and understand what's going on for them. Why are they not responding? What is happening for them? Or why are they becoming so like maybe reactive or aggressive? If you cannot balance yourself, you won't be able to be empathic to them. You won't be able to be compassionate to them, and you won't be able to be supportive to them or yourself if you're not in balance. So this is the thing I think I love about the work that I do and the emotional connection process that I developed, is because you have a roadmap. And because we use the attachment framework, really attachment teaches us how to repair relationship, how to rebalance yourself. And when you use it, you start to feel more empowered. Like, I can have a disconnection with somebody, and if they're not available to talk to me about it, I know how to rebalance myself so I can show up as me, right? And so I can understand, they were not able to respond to me because they're just so overwhelmed. They don't know what to say. That's a completely different thinking, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
that keeps me in a positive interaction with them.
And I think about all the different kinds of people, right? And the different leaders. And I've met wonderful leaders. I've met people who are leaders in name only, and yet they're still, people's bosses. And a lot of times when we come against negativity or somebody's unavailable, we think, why are they mad at me, right? This internal dialogue and then we spiral in that way, and that the way that it can unsteady us. But as you're saying, if I am emotionally regulated and I am planted, then I can see somebody else's disconnection or bad behavior as about them and not about me,
Yeah.
right? And I am concerned. I don't know if concerned is the right way, but I'm interested in what people expect at work. Like, what are we expecting from these relationships? What is a reasonable professional expectation as to how to interact with people? What do I need from these interactions with people at work versus what is reasonable, right? So going to work, I don't, what should we be expecting other than, I don't know how to really
Yeah,
articulate what I want to say.
Mary, what I want to say is it's normal for us to expect good behavior, right? It's normal
Yes.
for us the person to respond to us when we reach out to them. It's normal. It's normal.
Yeah.
Because we are human beings, we are wired for connection. We want to connect with them. The problem becomes is when people don't understand, when they get triggered, they start to protect themselves, right? They get triggered. The protection actually is a protest to the disconnection, but they don't understand this. So yes, we expect people to be nice to each other, to work cohesively together, but that doesn't happen because people get triggered, they get hurt, and they don't know how to talk about it. I'll give you a very interesting example. I used to work with this team like 10 years ago, and these two people were like great friends, and they were co-workers. They worked together for 10 years together. One was the sales manager and one was the production manager. Well, one of them got promoted, right? So the production manager gets promoted and the sales manager was hurt, but he didn't know how to talk about it. So what did he do? He shut down. And that's one of the ways we protect ourselves when we get hurt, is to shut down, to say, I want to get away. like I don't care, right? So I'm not going to talk about it. Well, as now the CEO, this new CEO who was promoted, she deals with her disconnection when she noticed that the sales manager was distant. She got saying her way of dealing with, I have to stop you. You're turning away from me. I have to stop you, right? So the way she responds to it, she starts to complain, blame, criticize him. Like, why are you not responding to me? I've been sending you emails. What's going on for you, right? Her tone of voice gives him the message that she's unhappy. But he doesn't know how to deal with that emotion, so he shuts down more. So this is what we call a pursue withdraw cycle. One person gets hurt, they withdraw. The other person senses that withdrawal and respond to it by pursuing the connection. So because two people want to be connected, they get stuck in this terrible negative cycle. And this cycle actually is what is in the team. This is what we find in the workplace all the time, these cycles between team members, between manager and employee. Or one manager says, my direct report is whining all the time. No matter, like, every time she comes to one-on-one, she keeps complaining to me and complaining to me. Like, I don't even want to meet with her. I'm avoiding her. Again, pursue, withdraw. So we expect people to be adults, right? But adults have hurt feelings. They get hurt. And
Right.
I remember when I worked with that CEO and the sales manager, the first thing she said, I was so hurt that you didn't come to this company meeting. We when the transition happened, we're supposed to talk in the front of all the employees, talk about our vision and mission and core values, and you didn't show up. And he said, yeah, I didn't show up. I wasn't able to be there for you in that moment because I was hurt. But the interesting part, the example he brought in, he wasn't hurt because he didn't get promoted. He was hurt because after the promotion, he walks into her office, he sees a Christmas gift, and it was addressed to both of them, and she didn't tell him about the Christmas gift.
Mhm.
Like you said, it's always starts with small.
Yeah.
And he carried that hurt for 1 year
Yeah.
before he told us, right?
Mhm.
Because he didn't know how. He would say, like, oh, what's a big deal? Such a Christmas. But he was hurt, and the more he got hurt, the more he withdrew and distant.
Mhm.
The
Yeah.
way she felt his distance, she would get triggered, and she would respond with this attacks and criticism and complaining. And they were just continually triggering each other. So yes, we expect people to behave in a way, if they're balanced, they are going to be great. But once they get disconnected, they're out of balance.
Mhm.
They can't really respond in a way how they used to be
Mhm.
because they're hurt. And that's why we keep saying we need to teach people how to talk about hurt feelings in a professional way, in a
Mhm.
safe way, and which not just say, oh, I got hurt. Oh, I'm sorry, because apology doesn't fixes anything. No, we need to do it in a process, in a way that heals that hurt.
I love that you said adults get hurt, right? Because we say, let's just all be adults here. That's what I hear all the time. Well, let's just be professionals. Okay. Yeah, but we're human persons. And so things are going to happen. Conflict's going to happen. And conflict is never the problem. It's mismanaged conflict. It's when we we don't know how to disagree well. And, and if we expect people just to suck it up or figure it out themselves, then we are asking people not to be people. We are, um, doing everybody a disservice. So real professional behavior is recognizing the emotional dimensions to all of our interactions. As you said, this dance or the game, that is part and parcel of everything that's going on. And so why not be aware of it? Why not talk about it? Why not understand it? Because emotions are great information. And we all know the more information we have, the better decisions we're going to make, the more we can see. And with your great example of if I think a problem is that I got promoted and that's the disconnect, then I'm trying to solve for that and I'm
Yeah.
pursuing that. But if the problem is something else, I did not share this with you, because whatever narrative was then spun because you didn't think enough about it, you thought it was unimportant, you answered for me instead, whatever. Again, we're just layer upon
Exactly.
layer. It starts small and then the erosion starts slowly and it just builds. And all of a sudden, we're like, how did we get here?
Exactly. And then you feel so sad. You feel so depressed in those moments. I mean, I remember this sales manager. He was so sad. But the first thing he when he came to the meeting, the first thing he said, "I don't have time. I'm very busy.
Mm-hmm.
What is this? Why are we meeting?" And then 2 hours later, after we had the time to slow it down, to understand what's happening, and he heard how much she really missed him of
Mm-hmm.
working together, and he also missed her working together. He suddenly says, "Oh, I can do this project and I can do this project." And he turned to the CFO and says, "Oh, why don't we meet up for this one?" He was a completely different person.
Yeah.
And it's so sad, Mary. It's
Yeah.
so sad to see people really suffering, really struggling when they get stuck in this content issues. This is the problem. I don't think conflict is the problem. Conflict is not a problem.
Right.
The conflict is just the inflammation. The real virus is emotional disconnection that happens.
Mm-hmm.
When people start to talk about conflict, they think it's content
Right.
related.
And it's
It's
not.
not content.
No.
I don't even talk about content when I teach people how to resolve this repair. We all talk about the experience, what we feel, and the message we receive. The
Yeah.
message we receive is I don't matter anymore.
Yeah. Absolutely. We want to externalize it. The conflict is that you are being late and that's a problem for me. But it's not because you can take the same example or the same external whatever information and plug it in with different people and it's not a problem for you. It's always about the relation, the situation, what's going on underneath
The
it.
impact. I think
Yes.
it's always the impact. Like, what
Right.
impact did this have on you? And what impact does this have on me?
Right.
And not to say that somebody did something wrong, because
No.
I feel like every behavior is done in a way to protect themselves, right? Every behavior is exhibited because people don't understand what to do with their feelings. So they
Mhm.
exhibit this bad behavior or they shut down. But underneath is there so much fear, so much
Yeah.
shame going on, so much
Mhm.
sadness going on.
Yeah.
They feel totally helpless in those moments.
Yeah. And so when something has happened, let's say at work, and you have been harmed or you feel hurt, how do you go about repairing that harm or that hurt so that you don't just move on? Because people say, okay, well that's in the past. Let's just move on. Have
Yeah,
you met a
no.
human person? That's not how it
No,
works.
no, you cannot move on. You really need to be. And one of the things that we learn from attachment is there's a great acronym that Sue Johnson uses. And she says that the key question in attachment relationships is, are you there for me? Okay, it's A.R.E. The acronym is A.R.E. Are you there for me? And A.R.E. is translated, are you accessible to me? Okay, are you accessible to me? Are you willing to open your heart? Are you willing to share your pain? Are you willing to share your vulnerability with me? Are you accessible to me? Because if you think about it, when people do that, they're actually telling you how much you matter to them,
Mhm.
right? They're letting you in your heart. And R is for, are you responsive to me? Are you emotionally responsive? Like, can you hold my space? Can you not go into the defense right away? Can you just listen in a way that really makes me feel that you care about my feelings, about my hurt? And when I share my hurt, do I see that it really impacts you? Can I sense that responsiveness? And E, are you engaged with me? Even if you don't agree with me You know, on content level, you don't have to agree, but on the emotional, that is my experience.
Mhm.
So, are you engaged with me? Can you sit with me in a conversation, even though it's so hard for you to hear it, so I can feel your presence, that I feel that you care? And what everything, all the research and all the science shows is that when people are able to be A.R.E, accessible, responsive, and engaged in a conversation, they continue to nurture the relationship, heal their injuries, and create more and more safety in the security in the relationship. So, are you there for me has to answer with a resounding yes.
Mhm.
You know, if you think about your relationships in your workplace, you can ask that of your manager. You know, you think about your manager. Is my manager there for me? And if the answer is a resounding yes, you have a secure connection, you have a secure attachment. If the answer is a no or a maybe, you have insecure attachment. So that means every time they do something, you will interpret it like in a negative way, like, oh, they don't care about me, something wrong. So A.R.E is really is the key to learn how to be accessible, how to be responsive, and how to be engaged.
In your experience, how many people walking around, let's suppose managers, um, would be able to, that people work for them would be able to say, yes, my manager is there for me in that way? How many people do you think are that healthy and present and generous?
You know, I don't know. I'm thinking about the statistics that came up by Myers-Briggs, and they said that 86% of people are in conflict at some level in the workplace, right? So it's hard to say, especially with virtual
Mm,
workplace. I felt like it's less now
mm,
because people get on virtual and they go right away through tasks and things on the agenda, but they forget the human element. We lost that bits for connection that we have in the workplace when we work together. So I don't know, it's hard to say, but I would say maybe 50-50. I'll take that, you know, Mary. They always start, if you think about it, you always start at 100% when you just start working with a
mhm,
person.
mhm,
And the problem is, as you start working and you get disconnected or you get triggered and you don't know how to repair that or talk about it, then you get more and more distant.
mhm.
And then you start to look for another job. And
Yeah,
it's a cycle, continuous cycle. But I hope that people with after COVID recognized how much we need each other,
yeah,
really, how much we depend on each other for that emotional support, and more people can talk about it so they can feel like, yes, my manager's there for me, my team members are there for me. I'm never alone. Even though I work here in my home office, I never feel alone, right?
mhm.
That's what we want. We want people to feel that.
Yeah. That's such a gift. And I would also say another reason to be present and available at work is because if I start off 100% right with you and then things can go down from there. But if things really do escalate in a negative way and I leave the organization, I would say the next place I go, I'm not starting off 100% because
100%,
I
yes.
already have, this, we think when we leave a job, oh, I'm gonna have a fresh start. Well, if you haven't done any work to repair the harm that has happened and yourself and to recenter yourself, you're dragging that on to the next place. And
Exactly.
every place is filled with people that aren't perfect.
And
And
you also,
man,
Mary, you also learn to use your protective behaviors more often. I mean, we
hmm,
all use it, right? We
sure.
always, we often sometimes get shut down or numb out, or it's so painful, we get overwhelmed, we start to defend or attack. We do that
Hmm,
occasionally. The problem is when we do it all the time.
hmm,
And so, if you correct, if you don't repair that hurt and you move to another job, you will start to respond reactive, protective behaviors faster and
hmm,
more sooner. So, you
hmm.
will constantly get stuck in that negative pattern.
Yeah. I would say even if the vast majority, let's just say the vast majority, and I don't think it's true, but let's suppose the vast majority of people would say a resounding no, or I don't know about whether or not my manager is a safe place or a safe person. I would still say, well, what else is there? Like, this is the answer. The answer is connection. The answer is emotional intelligence. And even if it's not a given, you're going to get it, it should still be what we're searching or going towards, right? And whether or not somebody else is there, we can change people by how we show up. We can manage up by being stable, by being emotionally developed, by being generous, by all of these sorts of things. We can help other people along on that journey. And it might be hard. Many times it is hard, but it's also hard to live in the pain. And so I would just say for those of you who are listening, if you are in a difficult circumstance and you're like, well, I am very disconnected, and you would be disconnected too if you were in my circumstance, there's still so much hope and so much you can do to have a better work environment. And maybe you eventually need to leave that work environment, of course, if it's toxic and really harmful to you. But there's a lot that we can do to be that person, to be that trustworthy person, to be that emotionally stable, healthy person.
Oh, absolutely, Mary. And I think that from my own experience, when I started to learn about psychology 15 years ago, our family was completely disconnected.
Mhm.
And through the process of learning about emotions and using it, and even though my family did not go to school, they did not finish my class, they didn't read my books, I had an influence on them because
Right.
I was using that language. I would say, "Oh, we're in a negative cycle. Oh, I see that we're getting stuck. Oh, I see that we're having disconnection. I feel hurt." I started to be the person who would role model that it's okay for me to talk about emotions. And even though when I would say, "Oh my gosh, I feel alone," and people would say, "Oh, again, your emotions, again, you're talking about the feelings." I said, "Yes, my feelings are valid." And I would constantly use that language where now they use the language, you
Right,
know?
right.
Now they say, "Oh, your feelings are valid. You're not alone," right? And it becomes easy. It becomes part of the norm,
Yeah,
Mary.
yeah.
And you're right. And I want to tell people there is absolutely hope.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Yes, it's work. Of course, it's
Yeah,
work.
of course.
Because how did you get here, right? How long did it take you to get to that place? Well, it's going to take you faster because we have the roadmap, we have the tools, we know. I mean, attachment has done such an amazing work in the area of adult bonding, adult relationships, even attachment in the workplace for the last 10 years. We have so many studies that show such a positive results. So absolutely, there's hope.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Which is good to know because as you've been talking about these patterns, when we're in a pattern or in a dance, the great news is we could choose something different. We can
Well,
take
I
ourselves
would say
out.
it's choosing is hard because in the moment when you're emotionally activated, it's hard to choose.
It
But
is.
what you can is you can choose to come back, right? Once you go through your own rebalancing, you can come back and say, "Look, you're important to me. I
Mhm.
care about you. I want to repair. I want to talk about this disconnection. Nobody is a bad guy. We got into a negative cycle, but because we are important to each other, we depend on each other. We need to repair the relationship."
Yeah.
So when we look at the relationship as the most important thing in our
Mhm.
workplace, then
Mhm.
it changes everything for us.
Mhm. I like that. It goes back to this idea that conflict is somehow external, and we're talking about this detached thing. Like work is external, and we're talking about this detached thing. But rather, when we feel secure, when we have these good relationships, then the work is so much easier. Work is not without stress and problems and markets shift. But when we have that support, so many people will stay in organizations even if it's not their dream job, but because of how they feel. What does it feel like to be there? How do they
Yeah.
feel valued? And that is worth its weight in gold. It really is. And you could be in your dream job and be, absolutely miserable because of the way you feel there, how you feel disconnected, you feel disrespected. It's not working.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's feelings are very, very powerful for us to know. And it gives us that sense of growth and opportunities, resilience. When we feel connected at work, we can do anything. And that's,
Mhm.
I hear that a lot when I do the trainings and people repair the connection. Like in an hour and a half, they suddenly say, we can do anything when we're connected, because I feel so much more hope, enthusiasm, freedom, and confidence. That's what you get. We need to feel safe in the workplace, and we need to feel connected in our relationships. I use this metaphor a lot that like we are fish and our water is our relationships. So if we want to be this beautiful fish that is swimming, we have to understand that relationships are the key for our thriving. Relationships is our growth.
Mhm.
And for us to develop our talents and continue to explore the world and understand and create and risk, we have to have good relationships.
Mhm. Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about what you're working on right now.
Well, I'm working on creating more training opportunities for people, because I love training internal trainers. This is, I think, for me, the important thing is because I feel like trainers, their job is to empower leaders and
Mhm.
teams, right? To work cohesively together, to be engaged and perform and so forth. And sometimes I feel like they're missing the mark of what to teach these managers, because they teach the same thing like skills, communication skills or negotiation skills, and they're missing the heart of the problem, or getting to the heart of the matter, which is emotions. And I was just doing a panel discussion at the ATD conference, I don't know, Association of Talent and Development, and I was talking about the importance of working with emotion and how important it is. So I'm working on that. I'm also writing a new book, Becoming an Emotionally Connected Leader.
Mm.
Okay. And I'm going to talk all about, yeah, how do you deal with emotions? How do you work with emotions? How do you actually understand when there's a disconnection? Because that's, I think, another problem for managers and for team members. They don't know what to pay attention to. They see something is wrong,
Mhm.
but they don't know what to do next, or they don't understand. So to understand relationships, I think sets you free,
Mhm.
because it improves
Absolutely.
your professional relationship, it improves your personal relationship, and it gives you tools to know how to manage these relationships.
Mm. That's it's such a great thing to think about, that understanding emotions sets you free. And so I think it's so curious that many of us are afraid of emotions, that we aren't emotionally literate. I'm certainly on my own journey of understanding my emotional responses, because I'm my whole life been a stuffer and a people pleaser, which means you got to numb yourself out to
Yeah.
help the room. And so I'm on this journey probably the rest of my life to try to understand myself and my own emotional responses and not take on other people's emotional responses. And, we have all these emotionally stunted people walking around trying to get their needs met and be good people and be good colleagues, um, and then all the mistakes that happen in between. Life happens in between. So the work that you're doing is so life-giving. It's freeing to be the people that we want to be and don't have the language or the tools to do that.
Yeah, Mary.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I noticed, that people are working on themselves like in isolation. Like,
Mm.
I'm going to improve myself. I'm going to do. But first of all, they don't have the conversations how they impact each other.
Mm.
Like the example was the sales manager and the CEO, right?
Mm.
She thought that he got hurt because he was not promoted. Although, yes, it was the beginning, but he was actually hurt because she didn't tell him about the Christmas, right? Christmas
Right.
present. The meaning it has.
Yeah.
And if he doesn't tell her, if we don't tell each other how we impact each other and what
Right.
triggers us, doesn't mean that you did again something wrong, but you don't know my sensitivities, my raw spots, if I don't tell you these raw spots. So I feel like individually we're responsible
Hmm.
to understand our triggers, to understand our raw spots, and then share it with the other
Hmm.
person, so they have an opportunity to be there for you. Not to say I'm sorry, but to hear you and reassure you that you are important. That's the attachment needs. You
Mhm.
do matter to me. I do care about you. You're valued. And
Mhm.
I want to acknowledge you're not alone, right? These simple human attachment needs, human needs that we need, are missing from the conversations.
Mhm.
I'm missing. And so we have these coaching sessions with one person and another person. But what we need to do is we need to have two people. We need to have coaching. All the coaches should stop individual sessions and do two people and always say, bring your manager, bring your team member, and let's repair the relationship so you can be stronger. And the thing is, when we become stronger in our relationship and connection, we become less sensitive.
Mhm.
We no
Yeah.
longer get triggered
Yeah.
because we get that nurturance from each other. We pay attention to each other. We support each other. We say, "Hi, Mary. How are you? You're so important to me. I care about you." We
Mhm.
start to make implicit explicit.
Mhm.
And that's like saying, "I love you" every day. We need that every day, like food. We need the food every day. We need that nurturance every day.
Yeah.
And not because you are obligated, but because you want to do it. It's from your heart.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, in my work as a mediator or when I do facilitated conversations, I meet with people individually, and then I'm always interested, when we get together, what they told me versus what they tell each other. And what they tell me, it's like they have problems with totally different people. They work at different places because what they see, what they need, their impact, they're both hurt, they're both upset, but usually about very different things. And the other person has no idea what's going on with the other one, but we spin our narratives when we just assume that person is doing that intentionally. That person knows, they know that's harming me and they don't care. And so when we don't speak up for ourselves, we don't know how to speak up for ourselves. And I mean this not in a negative way. When we know how to go to the other person and articulate what's going on with us, what is the issue? Why am I feeling a certain way? It gives that other person the opportunity to be able to say, "Oh, I wasn't rolling my eyes at you," or, "Oh, I didn't know that this was important to you." Whatever it is, but that communication with one another, if we don't give somebody else the opportunity, and we that means that we don't have to do the work to figure out what it is other than I'm upset and the grand narrative of this other person is against me, instead of what is the specific behavior or behaviors that are leading me to have this conclusion. What do I want to do about it? What can I do about it? What's the next step? It feels very disempowered, where we just have to wait for the other person to say something, to apologize, to change. And then we just sit and the gulf widens and widens.
You're right, exactly. There was a study that looked at people, at distressed partners, to see what was the change event that made one group more secure and more distressed and already like they can move forward, to the another group where they lessened the distress but not completely healed. And what they found was in the moment when they were able to share what triggered them and what sensitivities had hurt them, and they were able to share the emotions to the facilitator, when the facilitator said, "Can you turn and share that with your partner now?" And in the moment when they turned, they couldn't share. And they also couldn't ask for what they need.
Mhm.
Often in our process, we don't ask for behavior change. We ask for that corrective emotional experience where the person articulates that we are important, we matter, that attachment needs, that emotional presence. And when they cannot ask for what they need, it's like they have this block. And the block is the never again moment. It's like, I will never put myself into your arms or into you to give me what I need because you have hurt me so
Mhm.
much.
Mhm.
And what we find is that when you have this never again moment, that means you have not had enough opportunity to share your emotions, to really articulate enough to understand how hurtful it was for you. And the interesting part is that when you take the moment to really sit in that space of that hurt, name the emotions. You know, Lisa Feldman Barrett, she talked about granular emotions, to be granular, as specific as possible.
Mhm.
And you can draw an image of that emotion. And then you identify the bodily sensations in that moment. And then you feel that fear, what's happening for you, and the fear about the other person, and the fear about the relationship. All those steps help you to experience that and allow that person to experience it with you. So you're not alone in that experience. And that is the moment, they said, that helps to repair that never again moment. So your brain is no longer scared that you will be again in that moment. It will let it go. It will say, okay, you can trust this person again. You can turn to them and ask them for what you need. I thought that was very interesting because
Yeah.
we often miss that moment. We can just maybe share, that was hurtful to me. And the other person said, well, oh, thank you for sharing. I didn't know. But they still hold on to it,
Mhm.
right? Because they really didn't say, no, it was hurtful to me. And it felt like I was like on the bottom of the pit. I was all alone. I was nobody. And my fear was that I'm no longer valued to you. And I need to know that you value me. And the other person says, I do value you. That is like, boom, repairs the connection.
Yeah. Well, Lola, this has been a great conversation, but we're running to out of time. So my
Sorry.
last my last question for you is, when you look into the future of work, what do you think needs to happen so that not only will all people be treated with dignity and respect, but that they will thrive and flourish?
I think education, Mary, really,
Mm.
I just feel that we need to have these educational moments in our workplace to allow people to talk about the emotions, to have the process where they can repair the relationships. You know, I have a 16-year-old granddaughter, and she was on my podcast the other day, and she said, I've learned about emotions, and every day, you know, we have a forum, we can talk about it, and it's okay to talk about feelings, and it's not okay to talk about emotions. And so you think about the young generation, and no matter what you have, young or old, we all have emotions, and we need to make emotion as our friend, right? Because if we want to change our relationships, the only way we can change our dance is through music, to changing the music, and emotion is the music in
Mm.
our relationship. So I feel like when we have the permission, when we have the normacy, when we know how to respond to emotions and hold that space, we really do change the culture of our companies and change our future.
Mm. That was so beautifully succinct. I just love how you ended that. And I do want to give a shout out to your podcast, which is called The Leader in You. So you can go out and find that along with all of Lola's books and her articles. And well,
Yes, and
thank
you'll
you.
be on my podcast,
Yes,
Mary.
yes, I'm
This
looking forward to
May.
that as well, continuing
Yeah,
our
so
conversation.
nice.
Well, thank you so much for being on Conflict Manage. I really enjoyed our time together.
Oh, I so appreciate the work you're doing, Mary. I think the more people understand what drives conflict and how to repair the conflict, the better the world will be.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, take care.
Thank you.
Lola, thank you so much for being on Conflict Manage and all that you shared. I could just feel myself thinking through what you were saying as you were talking, and I know I have a lot more thinking through as to emotions at work and how emotions work at work. So, dear listener, I hope that you are farther along in your emotional development than I am, but we're all works in progress. And Lola, I thank you so much for your work and what you're doing to help people have better lives and better work environments. Conflict Managed is produced by third-party workplace conflict restoration services and hosted by me, Mary Brown. You can find us online at 3pconflictrestoration.com. Come back, we have new episodes every Tuesday, and I'm so excited to say that my new book is coming out in 2 weeks. How to be, no, that's my old book. See here, get my new book out. It's got a line here. I won't have that, but Winning the Generation Wars at Work, Making Your Age an Asset is coming out on January 13th. I'm very excited about it. And this whole year, 2026, we're going to be talking about generational issues. I love that Lola touched on that at the end about emotions and we all have them no matter what age we are, but that we are, I think, becoming more emotionally literate, that we're doing a better job of teaching that to young people. Conflict Managed is produced by third-party workplace conflict restoration services and hosted by me, Mary Brown. You can find us online at 3pconflictrestoration.com. Come back, we have new episodes every Tuesday. Our music is courtesy of Dove Pilot. And remember, conflict is normal and expected. Let's deal with it. Until next time, take care.